Okay, I'm having a talk, my second video interview, you lucky guy, with Gerry Bryant,
Two
pianist.
times the charm. Go
Let's
ahead.
hope so.
Yes.
After all the curses that have been set
Mhm.
upon us in terms of the internet and so on, but pianist, composer, attorney, activist, Gerry Bryant, Los Angeles based, uh, wonderful man, and this guy is totally committed to music, to making music of all kinds and sorts. We had a conversation. Our first conversation was about the story of your adventures in college and so on, and how come certain decisions and certain directions were taken. I'm going
Yeah.
to make sure everybody is linked to that conversation at performingartsreview.net when I put this one up. But here's the interesting business about this interview. This particular page, you're going to have a page for these. There's no room on your page for what we're talking about here. But
Right. Right.
you gave me an opportunity to have a kind of an overview of four of your CDs, one of which predates interpretations, which I really spent some time on our first
Right.
interview.
Right.
So, and the other three are since. And yeah, this was an eye opener for me on many, many levels. I hope we'll be able to go there and talk about it. But first of all, about just development, just about
Hmm.
development, and how maybe there's something. And in fact, we had a talk before. But I'm trying to tie this in with the idea of how come people produce a whole lot of CDs, and why. Some people, as we
Right.
discussed, are really chasing something fine and dandy. Some people are using these CDs as calling cards. Wonderful in our profession
Right.
of music,
Right.
and others are just involved in something that I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
Because what I've heard, just in a generic term, and then I'll let you gabble back at me for a bit, is
Hmm.
over these four CDs. I know one predates interpretations, but what I see is a man who is improving and improving and improving and improving. And the four CDs in question, all the stuff is going to be up on your webpage at performingartsreview.net. But musical moments,
Hmm.
chasing the clouds away, the romance continues, and rhapsodic. And it's about your maybe just kind of not only we've talked about legacy. Of course, everyone wants to leave a
Right.
kind of legacy,
Right.
but also about just plain, I don't know, you get kind of in the habit and you improve. You're going to improve between one performance CD and another. Just the discipline of creating a CD. Go, it's your turn.
Right. Well, as a matter of fact, all of the things that you mentioned, and as we talked about before, about why different people do what they do musically, from legacy to chasing Grammys and awards to whatever reason, I have a little bit of all of that in me,
Of
but
course.
that's no one factor really defines me or propels me. For me, music is just part of my DNA. It just always has since I was a child, and we talked about it. And I was playing classical music amongst a neighborhood and a family that didn't like classical music, didn't have any exposure to it. And so, to me, no matter what I do in my life, I have to do that. And so when I find myself in periods that I am spending more time not actually creating, which I have recently as I'm with my day job that I've had to do for a while, and it's an interesting day job. And we've talked about that before. But for me, I always have to keep going to and doing the next project. Um, why? Just because that's just the way that I am. And as a matter of fact, when I complete a project, I never listen to it again and I never look back because it's not about that. For me, it's always about personal growth and continuing the music because it's so important, as I mentioned, since music is part of my DNA, and since music, as you and I just talked about a little bit earlier, is very, very healing, therapeutic for everyone. And it's something that's very vital to everyone's lives. And so for me, I've got to keep being inspired, being motivated, and doing something. So interestingly enough, I don't, as I mentioned, I never listen to anything that I've recorded or anything that I've done in the past because for me, as a matter of fact, I don't enjoy it at all. And so it's kind of funny. I was thinking to myself, so you and I are going to be chatting, and we're going to be chatting about some of my CDs that I've already done. Now, I should let you know, I have not listened to any of that music. since then, and I don't. And I'll tell you quickly about a very funny story. And
By the,
actually,
by the way, I can now tell you anything I want, and you'll believe it. So go ahead.
okay. But
So,
this sort of shows basically, and it's also about my holiday CD, which you and I were briefly talking about, and shows that I don't listen to any by music at all. And as a matter of fact, before I tell that story, which is a really interesting story, and it basically points to what a lot of artists, not only musicians, but artists actually go through in their approach to music, but also when I'm in the studio, when I record something. I was just in the studio last week recording, among other things, a Chopin's Nocturne in C minor. I never, and my guys who in the studio and my musicians, they know me well, and they know that I can't listen to anything. Like when I'm in the studio and I record several takes of whatever it is, I'm never satisfied, and I always think that it's horrible. So what you're supposed to do then, you take that, you take it home, you listen to it, so you go back into the studio and you decide what you want to use, so forth and so on. I never, ever listen to it. It takes me a long, long time to get up the courage to listen to it, and then when I know that I have to go back into the studio, which I'm going back this weekend, so now I know I've got to listen to this. And it's like pulling teeth. But then when I listen to it, it's not nearly as bad as I thought. But the point, though, is that I'm always thinking of the next piece. And so with the story that I wanted to say, which is actually amusing. So I was at a Christmas party last year at some friends. And we're all standing around doing the usual, sipping wine, cheese, chatting, and all of that. Which is very nice. And so the hostess, or friend, had some music playing in the stereo in the background, Christmas music. Fine. It was piano Christmas music. And so as I'm chatting with some people, so I'm hearing this music, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I really like that music. And I thought, I wish I could play like that. It's great arrangements, great play. Oh gosh, I wish. And I'm thinking this as I'm chatting, and being sociable at this point. And so then, at one point, the hostess says, "Oh, by the way," to everybody, "oh, the music that you hear, that's Gerry's music." Once she said that, and then I realized that was my music that I was listening, which I never listened to once I've done. From that point forward, I could not enjoy myself. Because all I do when I listen to music that I've already done, all I think about is, oh God, no, I made a mistake here, made a mistake there. I wish I had done this a little differently. So I can't enjoy my own music that I've done at all, ever.
Clearly, you're a basket case. I can only recommend therapy for this, because that
Several
is,
people have told me that. I think
and I'm joking, of course, but the point is about how self-conscious we can be, we creative people can be, and how really introverted,
right.
maybe, dare I even suggest you might be kind of an introverted personality, even though you go out and you play the gigs and do all that,
Yes. I think that actually I've had this discussion with a lot of people. I am definitely an introvert, despite the fact that I'm quite gregarious.
You're jolly and
all of that, and I'm performing all the time. I'm public speaking, doing all these things, but it doesn't make a difference. Introverts, basically, the definition of an introvert is someone who recharges him or herself by being alone and being away from people, whereas extroverts, they get charged by being out with people. And so I so prefer being by myself and charging by solitude, not by having to feed off the energy of others in order to be recharged. Now, in performing, obviously, performing is about, when you're performing live, you are basically, you're feeding off the energy of your audience, and that helps.
And you have a caricature. You have a, not caricature, but you it's a persona. It's a public persona.
Exactly. But you're absolutely right. But I and a lot of people, it sounds like a contradiction.
A lot of people in the arts who are in front of a public, who play piano, by memory in front of 4,000 people, they're introverts.
Right,
It's crazy how that works. Interesting.
And when you think about it, for any musician, the musicians become as good as they are by practicing, and practicing is a solitary activity. So you kind of have to be alone, independent, in order to be able to improve your craft. And so I am definitely an introvert. And so getting back to listening to my my needing
Or
therapy.
not.
Oh, right. So I know a lot of actors, actresses don't like to view themselves in
Yeah.
movies that they've done for whatever, and so
No.
this is it's a similar sort of thing. So for me, getting back to the very first thing you were talking about in this interview, I'm always looking forward and to the next thing, and to I don't know if I'm thinking about constantly improving because I always think that I'm not good enough. So it's more of a maintenance thing rather than improving. But because interestingly enough, I don't consider myself to be either a pianist or a classical pianist because I don't think I'm good enough for either. Now, obviously, I'm very good and
You are,
whatever.
yeah.
But when
Like
I
I
listen,
like I said, you need a little counseling. It'll be
yeah,
okay. Don't worry, don't
a
worry.
lot, a lot.
But it is also interesting about self to be serious. I mean, self
Yeah,
doubt. I have self doubt. I mean, anybody who is in any way in a public performance area of any kind, actors, all of it. There's always like, was that horrible or was it okay? And then
right.
then the other side of it is like, I don't want to know. Which I think
Exactly.
might be, but
Exactly.
so let me just jump in to try and bring us back on course a little
Sure.
bit,
Okay.
with just the idea that and give me a little chronology, if you will, about the years between these four CDs. Do you need some help on the titles or not?
I will. Yes, as a matter of fact, I will glance at them. I pulled them
Yeah,
up because I
yeah.
haven't listened to them, but I definitely know what.
Musical Moments was the first in
It
this
was the
bunch,
first,
right? Yeah.
and for that, I basically just I just wanted to make sure that I got out to the audience a couple of pieces that just meant so much to me. One is Eric Satie's Gymnopédie, which is yeah, very very well known. That is the one piece
Hey,
of all of the classical pieces that I actually do improvisation on top of, because I happen to be I'm a purist when it comes to
no,
yeah I know you're right
nah. Come on,
and
based on gymnopedies, whatever, however that piece and your
right,
improvisation, oh sure, you're a purist over
right,
there.
right. But that's the only classical piece I've ever done any improvisations on. I mean, all the Chopin might be my guy, and Tchaikovsky.
Yeah, there are some that just don't lend them. You don't toy much, but you know what? Satie
I
has
would
come up
want to toy with them though.
and
That's
Satie has
I
come up a couple of times in other CDs I've reviewed where
okay,
these pianists have improvised. So Satie seems to work,
okay,
and I could
okay,
agree. I would agree with you. I've just
okay.
let's see. I see music emotion. Here are my
So,
notes. I say, guess what? I think it's great. So there you
right.
go.
Now there are some musicians. Jacques Louisier, I believe is how his name is pronounced. He's a French pianist, and he literally does classical music, and then he swings it, improvises everything, and he's amazing. And he's been doing this for quite some time, and I find that amazing. For me, that is not what except for the Trois Gymnopédies, that's not what I do. I mean, in terms of classical music, I try to play it straight,
Straight,
for lack of a
so-called.
better
Yeah.
word. But the important thing to note for me is that in terms of my influences, so I'm constantly listening to the composers of the Romantic period, specifically Chopin, Rachmaninoff, those. And I'm playing that because that's what influences my own music and my own compositions, and then my arrangements of, say, a pop tune or whatever. So that's why I pretty much with classical music I look at it as pristine, not pristine from a negative standpoint, meaning that people can't relate to it who are not of a certain social economic class or sort of thing, but pristine meaning that it's like if you have a Mercedes, beautiful looking Mercedes or something like that, would you put tattoos on it? I mean, no. But I mean, although people do, there are some tacky people, but hey. So with
That was a double slap compliment, but that's okay. Yeah, there are some tacky people, but that's okay, you tacky people. Anyway,
right,
yeah. So yeah.
but yeah,
Go ahead.
so,
Excuse me, I
so
didn't mean to interrupt your
no, 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 I was
analogy.
just gonna say, so I mean, classical music for me you just don't need to touch. You just
Yeah.
need to try to do. I mean, your own interpretation, slightly. Obviously, there's some interpretation.
And yet you made that decision on the Satie piece, and it works beautifully,
And that was that.
beautifully.
But yeah, but
What about the
everything else.
Rachmaninoff? Isn't there a Rachmaninoff on it, one of these where you improvised a
Um,
bit? I can't
it
remember.
was,
I'm
I
trying.
just did a Rachmaninoff actually on the CD that I'm actually recording as we speak. But oh, I'm sure I
I'm
did a
just running
Rachmaninoff.
through here, but I thought you also played a little bit with some Rachmaninoff.
Actually,
Uh,
I can tell you that no, I did not play a little
I
bit
guess not.
with any classical. But as I said, from my original compositions, they are all classical, very much classically influenced, and classical music kind of runs through my DNA. Actually there was a great quote on which CD did I have? One of them about rhapsodic music. Oh yeah,
Oh,
my
it's in
rhapsodic
Rhapsodic. Yeah, it would be there. Yeah.
because to me, and the quote, which is well, it's not a quote, it's actually a definition, and the definition is a rhapsody is a musical composition that is free in structure, suggestive of improvisation, and highly emotional in character. And and actually on this CD, I have a rhapsody that I wrote, but then there is a rhapsody. Ah, there we go, the rhapsody on a theme of Paganini
Paganini. Oh, there we
by
go. The
Rachmaninoff.
Rachmaninoff. And you do a little
And
improv,
that
don't you there? Or not? I don't remember.
actually no,
Thank you
but
for the
I
correction.
actually did an arrangement. Yes, but I did the arrangement. That piece is actually, I mean, it's an orchestral piece.
Yeah.
I actually found an arrangement that's a solo piano arrangement of it that I really like, so I played that. But it's no that doesn't involve any improvisation. But the music that I compose in general, I definitely think is rhapsodic because I'm kind of an emotional sort of guy, romantic, emotional guy. And I said, and suggestive of improvisation because, as I said, I don't consider myself to be a jazz pianist because whenever I
This
hear
amazes me, by the way, that you say that, frankly, because
people,
you are a jazz pianist. I'm sorry.
well, people tell me that too, but whenever I go out and hear a real jazz pianist from Herbie Hancock or one of the masters, I always think, oh God, what am I even
Here we
doing?
go. Here we go. You need
But at the
therapy. We'll
same
work on it.
yeah, I do need therapy. Yeah, give me some recommendations.
I hope you
It's
understand I'm kidding, but the point is,
yes, yes.
you're a wonderful jazz pianist. Your
But
improvs are beautiful, fabulous.
well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think we talked about this last time, but I also have the same reaction whenever I hear, when I was in prep school, I was to perform the orchestra, Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor. And I think I told you about this. And so the orchestra leader gave me, at that time, an album of Sir Rubinstein, performing. And he's
Depends on
obviously,
the neighborhood.
yeah, right, exactly. So that was to be my inspiration. But when I heard that, I thought, oh, hell no. Why am I even playing the piano?
See,
So
that's
I
where it began. That's where it began. Yeah.
probably.
So
So whenever
really, because you've given me this anecdote before, and by the way, I have been there, where
okay,
you walk into a hornet's nest where there might be well intentions, but in fact it just scares the pea waddling out of you.
exactly,
So,
exactly.
on the other hand, there's also has been a malicious time where people will have perhaps said to you, "Here, kid, you play it like this guy," you know.
That's true too.
So,
Yeah.
but in any case, you really you're gonna have to have more massages. You're gonna have to try and relax, and I'll tell you, I'll give you some encouragement right now because
Okay.
I'm determined to
Okay.
keep this
No,
on
this
track.
is good.
I'm keeping this on track here if I can.
Okay. Okay.
Which is that again, understanding that one is a little bit before the one of the
Right.
four CDs is a little bit before interpretations. The one I spent
Right.
some real time on.
Right.
The maturity of your playing, it's incredible.
Well,
Better,
thank you.
better, better, and best. It's
And you,
marvelous. So, and I'm not
thank
just I'm not just trying to give you a little therapy here. I'm just telling you what's so. It
you.
struck me immediately.
Okay.
It struck
Well,
me immediately.
I appreciate that because what's interesting is that, and all musicians, all of your top musicians will say that playing music is not solely about technique. I mean, being able or in composing music, it's about experiencing life because it's
Yes.
your life experiences that you bring into your music, no matter whether you're a composer or just a performer or conductor or whatever. And so, in these ensuing years since interpretations, I mean, I can honestly say that my technique, because I have not been able to practice a couple of hours a day each day because of other commitments in life, and now having had a day job for many, many years, which is that's a whole
Oh,
other
please, let's
story.
not go there.
Really.
It's too painful for everybody involved
Oh
watching this. Okay.
God, no, yeah, we will talk about that. But the point though is that so I have not been able to my total consternation and frustration, I have not been able to really work on my technique and just improve my technique to the level that I would like to be at, where I could say that yes, I'm a classical pianist or I'm a jazz pianist. I'm not there technically, but what I am able to do, what we all as artists are able to do, is we take all of our life experiences, and believe me, I've gone through a lot.
I love the eyebrows thing. That was great. Very dramatic.
And I think those those things play such an important role on in your music and how you deliver your music, how you compose music, and so and getting back to what you were saying, so in my development through these years has been more not from a technical standpoint, but from an idea emotional standpoint,
Bingo.
which then translates into
Bingo.
music.
Yeah.
Uh,
Something just generally speaking about just plain maturity. And by the way,
yes, that too.
and by the way,
Right.
part of that maturity
Uh,
is, oh, crikey, how am I going to pay the rent this month? Part of that maturity is, oh, lordy, what do I, blah blah blah, the credit card. Well, how am I going to, we all, I think,
yes,
basically, America is not what it was when I was a kid. The middle class is no more. I'm pretty sure of
that's
that. So all of us have these things, but even in my experience and all of our experience, I'm
hmm
trying to say to you that if the pressures have increased, I don't want them to continue. I don't want them to increase, but your playing is better and better and better. That's what I have to say to
I
you.
appreciate that. Well, that's interesting because I
It's
don't
more
think
relaxed. It's
well,
what I've heard on these three, the three that are
mhm.
that would be the most recent, especially rhapsodic. I'm
Okay,
hearing a much more relaxed kind of personality. Isn't that interesting? Um,
that is very interesting.
and I'm much more confident about your improvisations, and also, by the way, much more confident about playing classical music. Very interesting. I have here.
Okay,
I'm looking at
okay,
Rhapsodic, and here's my note from whatever
uh-huh.
weeks ago. Rhapsodic, the Rhapsodic CD, I say to myself, tells me there's a classical musician dwelling in the midst of your jazz life, or sentiment, or spirit.
Okay,
We've had to talk about this, and so you know what I mean. There
right,
is
right.
this yearning somewhere in you, squashed and mauled and manipulated by that creep at whatever it was, uh,
Right.
who undoubtedly had no idea what he was doing to you. But my
Right.
point is that everything has matured.
Okay.
Beautiful, beautiful
Okay.
playing. So
Okay.
there you go.
Well, thank you. Because, well, I do need therapy because I don't see that at all. It's like, no, God, no. But yeah. But
Well,
no, I
see,
appreciate
that's why it's
that's
good to have me come in and give you a bit of
yeah.
a pep
Thank
talk.
you.
But
I mean,
no,
that's
no
why I
kidding.
do what I do, and that's why most musicians do what they do. I mean, to be able to, I mean, for you, and it's great. I mean, as I told you, my musician friends, when they read your review of my interpretation CD, they thought he gets it. He gets it because you are a musician, you're knowledgeable, and so you can relate to all of these different things. And other people, as I said, other writer friends said that they really like your writing.
Very, very sweet.
Yep.
And you know what? I am one of you. I am a musician, and I think that is a big
Right,
difference. I'm not a musicologist. I'm
right,
certainly not a journalist. Uh,
right, right.
but thank you. And I do, as I think we've talked even. I hear and see and think things on two or three or four sub-basement levels. How's that? Because I'm a conductor.
That's
I'm an
well said.
orchestra conductor.
And see that as a musician, that is why we do what we do. So for people like you, or even for people who have no knowledge about music at all, but they are for some reason touched by the music,
Exactly
that's the
right.
point. Whether it's one person or a million people around the world, I would love to have a million people around the world be touched by my music. And as I mentioned to you earlier, that more than likely what will happen is that I will expire is the word that I use, and so then all of my music then finally will get discovered. My god kids will reap the benefit because they'll make all this money for them, and that's great. But for me, in my lifetime, if I just touch one person, and
Yeah,
I've been fortunate to have touched more than one, but even if I just touched one person as
yeah.
opposed to millions, that basically is why I do what I do.
That's why
And,
we do what we do
and we're
in the
big,
sense of, a trio will give a concert for 12 people in a public
right,
place. The whole experience disappears into the thin air.
right.
There's nothing left of it, but they do it because they want to move people with what they have discovered, let's say, in a piece of music. And so the beauty of CDs is, as exactly you say, there's a satisfaction, there has to be, in
Yeah.
accomplishing these things. In your case, the growth just continues, and now it's time for us to start to shut it down, which is to say,
Okay.
how many, what, you have another half dozen coming down in the next 6 months? What
No.
is this?
Well, yeah, I actually have a lot more classical, like well, original pieces, and my next
Interesting.
CD after this one that I'm recording will
Oh,
be a,
let me
like,
just interrupt for a second. By the way,
yes,
your original tunes,
yes.
really wonderful, really
Oh, well,
wonderful.
thank you.
So, and I'll say that in my little, my little spiel
Okay,
when I
okay,
get it up at
okay.
the side. Anyway, excuse me for interrupting you, but we didn't
Yeah,
even
well,
touch on the
that
originals.
that is what really pleases me because it's the original music. It's even more
Beautiful.
heartfelt, and
Yeah,
so
beautiful,
that's
beautiful.
good. So yes, I have one more CD another CD that I'm doing should be out hopefully in the next month of different things. And then I'll have one more CD of my jazz group of all original
Let's
jazz
talk. Tell me a little bit about the jazz group, so we can make sure they get a little credit because they're on at least one of these CDs.
Yeah, what I've had these CDs that you've been reviewing basically are supposedly solo piano CDs of me doing classical music and
Yeah.
my original stuff. Um, but since I also have so much music that I've written jazz, contemporary jazz music for my group that I have not had the time or the money or whatever to record another, because I've done two CDs of my group,
Okay.
to
Yeah.
do more group CDs. So I figured, well, some of this music I really wanted to at least get out there.
Sneak them in.
And,
Yep.
and some of it actually sort of worked into some of the themes of some of these CDs. So I figured, okay, let me do a tune or two of my group on each of these CDs that kind of works into the theme, so I can at least get it out there. So that again, if I were to expire after this interview, then at least I know that some more of my group's songs had been out there, so people could hear it.
And the group is, I'm trying
Oh, it's called
desperately to.
Pocket Watch.
Pocket
Uh,
Watch, of course.
Pocket
Thank
Watch
you.
consists of between five core guys and then sometimes a female singer. Um, Although our drummer also sings, he sings like uh, oh God, I'm forgetting Johnny Mathis
Oh,
for like
really?
he's a drummer. He's an
Interesting.
amazing
Wow.
drummer.
Wow.
Well, as a matter of fact, he actually sings on one of these CDs, or the CD
What?
that I wrote for my ex-girlfriend. It's all about
Oh, that piece.
Carol
Yes.
Joyce. The male vocalist, just has a couple lyrics on it. He's the one singing that.
I didn't catch that. Thanks.
And he actually nailed it when he came to the studio to do that. He had a horrible
Huh.
cold. Said Jerry, I didn't want to cancel the recession, but I really don't know if I could sing. And I said, well, that's okay. Well, we'll see what we can do. And he
Man.
nailed it. It's amazing and as you know, when you deal with professionals
Yeah.
who, whatever adversity they are facing, when it
Yeah.
comes to doing the music, and when it is showtime, then they just make it happen.
Yeah.
That's kind of what life is all about in some ways.
Yeah. Thank you. By the way, want to remind everyone this man is also an attorney at some part in his life, so I do love kidding
Yeah.
him. But oh yeah, counselor, we are aware of these problems in life. In fact, we probably discussed just about everything but the collapse of whatever the empire. So
Yeah.
how do you want to finish this off? I'm going to put this all up. We're going to cover this territory. Great talk because we've touched on very, very important
Yeah.
issues. Yeah.
Just actually, one thing I was thinking about before that we could spend a lot of time talking about, and that is, does does the law and does
Mm.
music, do they actually complement each other? Since I'm a lawyer and a musician, and there it doesn't basically. But from a music to law standpoint, as I'm sure you and all of your listeners, your viewers know, music, if you, as a child, have music lessons, whatever, that actually helps your brain development.
Of course, yeah.
And so I think that, and I know that for me, since I started playing piano at 10, my best subjects in school were math and science. And I attribute all of that to my piano playing and my academic accomplishments. I contribute attribute all of that to that. So I think that, I mean, today, when since I'm continuing to do music, I mean, as a lawyer, and I'm a lawyer for musicians, entertainers,
Yes,
artists,
yeah.
I think that because I'm actually good at doing that, I think a lot of that is due to my being a musician. On the opposite end, does being a lawyer help my music at all? No, not in the slightest. I have not seen any sort of
Except that it keeps you out. Except that it keeps you out of trouble. Come on.
well, in theory.
Oh, I see. So there are cracks
But
in.
it does help pay some bills, and so that's
Yeah,
important.
there you go.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't want to talk about that.
You're right. So
I'm hanging on by my fingernails, so I don't want to go there.
okay.
All right.
That.
But that's
Yeah.
very interesting. I'm glad we just kind of touched on that toward the end because you you and the association. It's Lawyers for
California Lawyers for the Arts, right?
California Lawyers for the
California
Arts.
Lawyers for the Arts,
Do a
right?
very good service because I'm fairly well organized at many levels, but the law is a terrible mystery for at 96% of most of us in the creative arts. So
Sure.
you offer a great service for people that really need to get some things sorted out in terms of their careers and
Yes.
where the money's going and where it's coming from and all
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Okay,
Yep.
we're gonna have to quit. Jerry
Okay.
Bryant, thank you for interview number 2.
Thanks.
Possibly at about your next 17th CD release in the next 3 years, you'll come back and we'll talk some more. But great pleasure talking to you as always, and I'll put all this stuff up at performingartsreview.net. Thank you, and I'll
Thank you.
have
Thank you,
kind
Dan.
of an overview look at these four. I think we pretty well touched on it, but my big takeaway is tremendous maturity in playing, in musicianship, even maybe in the quality of the sound of these CDs. I don't know if you still keep the same team or not. I would have to check, but
Okay,
yeah, and lots of very interesting. I'm just looking at stormy weather.
Oh yes,
My notes
yeah.
on stormy weather. What a great rendition of that
Thank you.
song. Really innovative and interesting. Yeah. So.
I mean, I try to do that with any cover tunes that I do. I try to reimagine them, and that all stems from life experiences. If you experience a lot of life, then you think you hear something, you think, oh, how would I approach that? And you bring your life experiences into that, and so stormy weather. I think California Dreaming, and
That's a beauty too. Yeah.
all these things. I just try to reimagine them completely and have me really be able to relate to them, and then hopefully that in that reimagination others can appreciate it as well.
There you
So
go. Yeah.
I picked up the Stormy Weather because I really like that's a beautiful piece done
It
by
is.
Lena Horne did a version of it, and I mean, a lot of people have done versions which are wonderful. And so I just wanted to take it differently, and I'm glad you like it.
That's the
So
whole point,
thank you.
is to take it differently, to have
Yeah.
your own view. But stormy weather jumped out at me. Okay, we're done.
Okay.
We'll see
Thanks,
you.
Dan.
Bye.
Okie doke. Bye.